This is the story of Arlene Abend, a little woman with a big torch and a talent for mining metal for beauty.
I've been doing this welding for about 45 years, and I just turned 90, so someone else can do the arithmetic.
The Syracuse metal sculptor has really left her mark on central New York. Between commissions and exhibitions, she's always working.
It seems to be part of my genes. I never realized how productive I was because I did 80-hour weeks. I raised kids. Not only that, I ironed my husband's underwear. I was a fanatic housewife. I washed windows, cooked meals, casseroles. And then, as soon as they got off to school, I ran to do my work.
One of Arlene's most widely viewed commissions were her horse designs that flew the friendly skies of the old Carousel Mall. But ultimately, a corporate rebranding sent the ponies off to pasture. Yet those in the know will tell you that her work will stand the test of time. In fact, this massive sundial actually tells the time. Tick, tick, tick. Working. Growing up in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, Arlene developed an interest in the arts. Sketching, painting, and eventually ceramics.
In fact, I tend to use the metal a little like clay. I sort of drop it down into places. This is one of the reasons I can do forms that aren't typical. I just don't do a bead with the steel. I love to watch it melt. It has colors. It starts black, goes burgundy, then goes bright red, and then when it goes yellow, it makes a puddle. And that's the time it says, put me with something. Flat surface got me very frustrated because you were imitating dimension when I was doing portrait work. And so working in space was so much more satisfying, but so much more complicated.
She went on to earn an art scholarship at Cooper Union College in New York City, where she received a 3-year degree. And then years later, in her early 40s, she completed her studies at Syracuse University.
I had to take all academics. Mostly I couldn't take studio, but I took one studio course. And I picked up the torch, turned it on, and just fell in love.
So it was off to Central Tech for vocational training in welding.
I wanted instruction, and my gender was not very acceptable. So my training was spotty, and then finally I found one teacher, Joe Lucido, and he became my mentor. He kind of handed me all the difficult jobs. I had to be a hell of a lot better at welding than most of the guys because it was just not acceptable. But I needed good training, and with Joe, I got good training.
Arlene's sculpture, Breaking Through, reveals her struggle finding gender equity.
And the piece Breaking Through was my feminist symbol. of seeing the world around me, but being boxed in, and the top of my head trying to break into the real world instead of being the expectations of the chicken soup mother. And symbolically enough, nothing to do with me, it cracked. What happens to me with commission work is that I get to stretch my own boundaries, and I do something I wouldn't have done otherwise.
And that includes creating 2 Syracuse memorials, commemorating tragedy and sorrow.
My husband's whole family was annihilated in the Holocaust, and the Tree of Life burning is a symbol of the 6 million Jews. In fact, it has 3-foot flames, 6 of them that represent the Jews that died. And what I had was branches that helped surviving. And there's one branch with 7 leaves of the surviving Jews. And below it are branches that are broken off of families that did not survive. It was a piece that had an emotional connection.
In the wake of 9/11, a group of DeWitt residents embarked on a campaign creating a monument honoring those who lost their lives. They were able to obtain a twisted steel beam from the wreckage, 21 feet high and weighing approximately 6 tons. Atop the structure, Arlene constructed a diamond-plated aluminum flame.
And aesthetically, I really did not want to disturb the statement of the beam. And my piece was only maybe, I think, 4 feet tall. I did not want to impose on it. They wanted me to do something elaborate around the beam, but the beam was the statement. And I left most of that. And what I put was something like hands in prayer or 2 flames, just 2 forms, symbolic of the 2 forms gone. And I felt that the light reflecting on them and minimizing my work, but maximizing the power that destroyed that building was most important.
One of Arlene's signature elements is her usage of small metal figures that populate her work.
My small figures just started as my dealing with a little scale. But then when I started putting them in my work, what happened is they began to take on a personality, each piece. And I realized if you looked at them carefully and projected yourself onto one of those figures, my work was no longer a small wall sculpture. The size of the figure changed my work's scale to an environment. And these figures were now in an environment that had a whole different characteristic, like a large archway, rather than a little open space in a small sculpture. And the characteristic of having figures transform my work and have the viewer have a different concept of the scale. And so I continue to use it not as a small little addendum, but as a pivot point for seeing the shapes of my work. I started doing my metal and abstract because I got bored with imitating reality.
Arlene finds the potential in every possibility, and what seems unreal makes a very real statement.
Stop, I'm angry. The mirrors mean you stop, I'm angry, because it's reflecting the viewer. When you're angry, you have this visceral, sharp misery. It's a non-thinking head, it's emotional body, and it's two arms saying no more. It's called the dance lesson. And in this case, there was no terribly angry, strong emotion, just the delight of taking found pieces and symbolically putting them together. And it's like you take a little person and try to have them move with your hand, and it really was just whimsical and delightful. It's about the Iraq War. I was very, very angry. About a year later, I did this symbolic thing of aggression with the top part of it visually is an arrow. The second part of it is the handle for a gun. And down below is a pipe that's split, and it's a rocket that is spinning up to the weapons. And the weapon of war, and the whole thing had me very angry.
This bittersweet backyard scene was created for a client by Arlene to mark a daughter leaving home for college.
It is a relationship. It's called family. It has a circular feeling. The forms connect one to the other. The parents are anchored in the round form below, but the daughter is just touching it in one little spot.
Then, 22 years later, a front yard celebration of their grandchildren.
I want to have in these people's environment things that are symbolic and are reminiscent of the symbols. And these little toys do spin. And the form is similar to the original piece. I just love to experiment. And so the different materials that I've used just vary to different periods of time, I think. I do them in series.
Her love of experimentation led to stretching the boundaries of sculpting with ordinary fiberglass resin.
For me, they are the most expressive and important work I've done. So what I'm doing is basically creating surfaces inside and creating a sense of things that are in your mind rather than in reality. There's a portrait of me inside of it. In one case, it's looking out at a figure on a swing. It's called Remembering. It's dreamlike rather than realism. It's symbolic, but it has a life that goes beyond it. So the self within allows me to create visual kinds of things that I could not do in normal sculpture. And then they're open to interpretation. I want people to be able to take art and make it theirs. The sense of having to bring something into reality that didn't exist before is a very strong drive. My work is symbolic, and I think each piece has its own characteristic. The one characteristic they have, which is unlike, I understand, most metal workers, which is more rigid and geometric. My work is usually curved and rhythmic, and it has a sense of what it's trying to convey. My work is in 4 stages. The first one is the idea. That's wonderful. The second is, I call the ugly stage, where nothing that you had in your head comes to fruition. It is awful. And then you have to go and finish it. And it's the mundane part. And it really isn't too exciting. And then it's sort of done. And okay, it's there. But that segment of time where you and the work, time disappears. Something happens that is bigger than you, but you know you triggered it. You go through the becoming stage. And when something becomes what was in your head, it's like an addiction. It is the most wonderful, exciting moment of becoming. The becoming stage is my driving force. Creating is who I am, and what is a sense of life for me.